Welcome to the Fantasy Champions Fantasy Football Podcast. What do we got today, Rick?
We got our week 3 starts and sits.
Welcome to the Fantasy Champions Fantasy Football Podcast. Here's your host, Morgan Colby and Rick Lemon.
What's poppin', Fantasy Champs?
What's up?
Oh, I had the wrong show notes open. That could have been dangerous.
That always leads
Record
to
the same show twice. I'd probably do that at this point.
That is something you would do.
Full-fledged into the season. Usually by week 5, I start screwing everything up.
Yep. Just become a mess.
Yeah, disaster.
Just like my fantasy team.
Oh, yeah. My name is Morgan Colby. I got Rick Lemon with me as always.
What's up? Still, it's the Saquon Barkley stuff. It still gets me upset, true.
We'll talk about that, I believe, tomorrow. But today we got week 3 starts and sits. So we're going to guide you through your start and sit questions for the week. Before we do that, we're going to jump right in right away. But before we do, check out our website, thefantasychampions.com. Follow us on Twitter at the FFChamps, on Instagram at the Fantasy Champions. If you are a Facebook dweller, you can like us at facebook.com/the Fantasy Champions. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or any other podcasting platform, be sure to leave a review, share this podcast with your friends, and hit the subscribe button so you'll get notifications when we post a new podcast. If you're watching on YouTube, hitting the subscribe button is one of the biggest things you can do to support our podcast. So subscribe, and then subscribe again. Create 3 accounts and then subscribe. Don't do that.
But subscribe to us.
Don't do it, but make sure you subscribe if you're not already subscribed. Click the bell for notifications so you get notifications when we post our most recent podcast. Like and then comment down below your questions for starts and sits for the week if you have any. We'll also take other questions, but mostly pertaining to starts and sits. Before we jump in, quick word from our sponsor. If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. It's free. There are creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many other podcasting platforms. You can also make money from your podcast with a no minimum listenership. It really is everything you need to make a podcast all in one place. So be sure to download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. Let's jump right in, my friendones.
All right, let's do it.
Buckle in. Get prepared. We got Thursday Night Football tonight, and you keep forgetting about it. Not that this game is anywhere near exciting.
The only reason to watch this game
for Gardner,
it's Gardner Minshew, and if you have something involving your fantasy team, that's it.
That is very true. So yeah, you got a prediction? Who do you think is going to win?
You want me to predict the game?
Yeah, dude.
Oh, give me the Jaguars, bro.
I'm going to agree with that. I will agree with that statement. This might be the Dolphins' first win of the season, though. Wouldn't that be funny? Jacksonville goes 2-1 to start the season when everyone thought they were going to be the worst team in football.
Oh, I would love it.
That would be hilarious.
Love it.
Can I just say that I was right on the Jaguars for a majority of the offseason? I can't take that victory.
You like the Jaguars?
I did like the Jaguars. I know
you like Minshew. I don't know.
I thought people were underrating the Jaguars as a team.
Oh, okay.
But I was keeping it kind of under wraps a little bit, so it didn't look like a complete idiot.
I did not think so. I thought the Jaguars blew.
So let's jump. This is a good segue into our first start of the week. I don't know if we should start with sits. I do this every week, but we'll start with our starts. So Gardner Minshew is our start of the week at the quarterback, or I guess not start of the week, but a guy you should start at the quarterback position this week.
Right.
He's playing the Miami Dolphins. We thought maybe coming into the season that Miami would have an improved secondary, an improved defensive front seven, and it doesn't look like they've gotten any better defensively. They're minutely better, but they're not they're still one of the top 10 worst defenses in the NFL right now. And so Gardner Minshew on Thursday Night Football in prime time. I mean, the man does not cower to the lights.
Nope.
Is playing. Usually I would not suggest playing, unless the guy is like a big time starter for your team. I would not suggest playing a guy on Thursday Night Football. Because generally, even though you're tempted to watch the game, it's usually a crapshoot because of the lack of preparation. So take that with a grain of salt. But Gardner Minshew against Miami is a good matchup. I think he's going to score a lot of points in this game. I had the statistics in front of me, but I lost them. But why do you think Gardner should be a start this week?
Well, in the first 2 weeks of the season against the Titans and Colts, which both have better defenses than Miami, Minshew had 20 points and 24 points. And now going up against Miami, it's a home game. Yeah. It's a primetime game.
Right.
Minshew, he should shine in those types of games. He's got that type of personality. So I think for me, especially if you're streaming quarterbacks, like we do in some leagues, especially redraft leagues where you only have one quarterback, if you're in like a 12-team league and you're looking for somebody to start this week, absolutely Minshew would be probably the top guy. He's been good all year, and now you get to see him on prime time against a crappy defense. And he's got, like, one thing about Minshew that I think people underestimated was, the Jaguars might not be a great team, but they don't have the worst receiving core. Like, they have some decent wide receivers to help them out. And if Chark, if he plays, which right now is in the air, but
unlikely.
Chark, is it Laviska Shenault? Is that how you pronounce his name? The rookie receiver? Laviska. Okay.
Visca,
the rookie receiver. He's played well.
Everyone calls him Visca without the la. If you want to call him.
Yeah,
Visca.
so he's got weapons to throw to. He's got some good players to throw to, and he also runs the ball. Which are you just ignoring me all the time? So I just like Minshew.
I feel like you just ignored my whole tangent on Laviska Shenault.
Maybe I did.
You just walked right through it. The Dolphins give up, by the way, there are 3 teams in the league right now that are averaging 30 points per game and 4-point touchdown for quarterbacks. In the league, they've given up 30 points in the first 2 games on average. Atlanta Falcons with 35 points per game. Kind of pissed off. I believe Dallas was last week for them, right?
Yeah. Who are they playing this week?
Who, Atlanta?
Yeah.
I have no idea.
Oh, it's the Bears.
Mitch. Saddle up, Mitch. The Seahawks, who gave up 30 points per game so far, which sucks for me because I'm playing Dak this week. And then Miami, who is at 30.1, number 3 worst quarterback in terms of fantasy points allowed so far this season. So it is a little bit interesting. I think Minshew, I don't know that Minshew is going to score 30 fantasy points this week. But I think you can I think he's a great floor play. Like, if you are playing a matchup where you know you're going to win, you need or not know you're going to win, but it's an easier matchup. So you just need the points. You know what I mean? I feel like Minshew is a good, safe play. Like, he's not going to get you 40 points in a matchup, but I mean, he might.
If there's any week for him to do it, it might be
this week. But he can get you 25 to 28 fantasy points this week and hold you over until next week if you're streaming quarterback. So I think it's a good matchup. Not that it matters, but I believe it's at home. So
if he gets 28 points this week, I mean, I'd be doing cartwheels. That's
nuts. The fact that he got 20 and 24 against those past 2 defenses, I would feel good about his potential against Miami. Obviously, there's a Thursday night factor where quarterbacks, running backs, and the like don't generally play well unless your name is Derrick Henry.
Joe Burrow played well.
Oh, that's true.
Thursday night.
There you go.
Last week. So
anyway, saddle up Gardner Minshew. Our sit at quarterback for the week is Matty Ice versus Chi-Town. Chicago they're not as potent defensively as they were last year, as far as what I've seen so far this year.
Or the year before.
Say that again?
Or the year before when they made the playoffs.
Oh, yeah. But right now, Chicago is giving up only 13 fantasy points per game to the quarterback position right now, which is the 4th best in the league. So I don't know what they played in the first 2 games, but if you have If you have Matt Ryan, I would sit him this week. Now, Matty Ice does throw it a lot, so there is a chance that he does end up putting up 20 to 22 fantasy points somewhere in that vicinity, and he can be, a high-end QB2. But I'm just nervous against that Chicago Bears defense, and if you can choose other players to stream ahead of Matt Ryan, so you don't have to deal with the Bears defense, I would do that.
Yeah, the thing with Matt Ryan this week, for me, I'm not trying to start him unless I don't have really any better options. Like he's been fantastic this year in the 2 games he's played, but he also played against the Cowboys, which their defense is just not good whatsoever. And then the Seahawks, which have a better defense, but he didn't really. He only blew up in that game fantasy-wise because he threw for 450 yards.
Yeah.
I don't think he's going to throw for 450 yards this week against a Bears team that is very solid defensively. This is the best defense he's played all year. And he's had 2 great weeks, so you're going to want to start him, but I would not recommend it just because of the matchup. I could, though, like you said, I could see him throwing like 300 yards and maybe like 1 touchdown and ends up getting like something like 18 fantasy points and doesn't have a bad week.
Right.
But he's not going to get you a monster week this week. I would, if you have better options, I'd play him, even if it seems gross, because he's had a good start to the season.
Yeah. Okay. Our start, you want to move on to running back, start of the week at running back position?
Sure.
Or our start at the running back position. I've got to stop saying start of the week. It makes it sound like this guy is going to be the best player. It literally is just a good matchup that we're suggesting you play a player against. So it's Joshua Kelly of the Los Angeles Chargers. And I wanted to give you the, I wish I had it in front of me, but the snap percentages and the total carry percentage, the total carry counts from the last game. I believe Austin Eckler had 16 carries. He out-snapped Joshua Kelly, but Joshua Kelly out-opportunityed him, if that makes sense. He had 20. He had out-touched him. Right. Thank you. He had 23 touches on the ground, and Austin Eckler had 16. Not saying that he's taking over the starting role in the least, but he plays a very different type of role for the Chargers than what Eckler provides. So the big thing for me is that if that load, obviously you have to watch out for Justin Jackson's return and when he comes back, because I don't know that Joshua Kelly's going to get the same amount of work that he got last week if Justin Jackson's involved. But assuming that he's out, Joshua Kelly could get 20 touches against a Carolina Panthers defense that has given up 36 fantasy points to the running back position, number 1 in the whole league in giving up fantasy points to running backs. So you're going to see Eckler play well. I think you're going to see Josh Kelly play well. So it should be a relatively interesting matchup for him, but I would start him this week. If there's any week for Josh Kelly to have a huge game, this would be it. Yeah.
You pretty much hit the nail on the head with this one. With Kelly, like Justin Jackson is a concern for him long term. If he does not play this week, though, I think Joshua Kelly is going to have a big week. It's a positive game script against the Panthers team that really isn't that great, especially without McCaffrey now. And that defense was already not good anyway.
Yeah.
Especially the run defense. That run defense is awful. And Josh Kelly last week had 23 carries, he said.
Something like that.
Which is crazy. I mean, he's on pace for having 280 carries this year. He has 35 carries, which is right now tied for 6th in the NFL. I mean, he's getting the work on the ground, which is crazy. He is playing the Melvin Gordon role. Is that going to continue the whole season? I'm not sure, but is it going to continue against the Panthers? I would expect so. And if they are dominating the Panthers, like I expect, I don't know if they're going to dominate, but I think they'll win, and it'll be a positive game script. I mean, we could see Kelly getting a lot of like 3rd, 4th quarter carries as well if they're up by like 10, 14 points. I think if Justin Jackson doesn't play again this week, I could see Kelly easily getting another like 15 to 20 carries. I don't know about 23, but he might be more efficient.
I mean, I definitely don't think that he's going to get 23 carries again. I mean, he might. Who knows?
And he gets 20.
Carolina's not exactly a high-flying offense either. So
Right, yeah. And with Herbert is going to start again this week, so they might, with the rookie quarterback, they might try to run it, especially early in the game as well.
Yeah.
And later.
Okay. I had another thought on Josh Kelly, and I don't remember what it was. There it goes. Start Josh Kelly, whatever.
Yeah.
So this one, I feel we're going to talk a little bit more about the dynamics of this player on tomorrow's episode. So be sure to tune in and hear about that. But Devonta Freeman signed a contract this week with the Giants. And if you are listening to our podcast tomorrow and I repeat that, I apologize. Like I said, we're talking about it in detail tomorrow. But so Freeman signing with the Giants, obviously the first thing that people do when a big running back goes down, whether it's short-term or long-term, they go and spend all their waiver budget, myself included, on the replacement. Now, I spent $51 out of $200 on waiver budget on Jerick McKinnon. And I feel like that's justifiable because the 49ers actually have a good run
offense
or good offense and they're good at drawing up run plays. Sure. Whereas Barkley did not look good for the Giants behind that offensive line. What makes you think Devonta Freeman's going to look good behind that offensive line or anyone else for that matter? So for me, I was just avoiding the Giants backfield altogether. But if you did pick up Devonta Freeman, I'm not judging you. He's going to get a majority of the work as the season goes along and all that stuff. And he's going to get a very large load of pass catching, I would think. He's probably going to fill the Saquon role in terms of pass catching, which he's good at. So you're going to see that happen with Freeman, but I would not start him this week. And there's two reasons why. A, they're playing the San Francisco 49ers defense. Yes, the 49ers had lost some defensive players and they're a weaker defense because of it. I think they're still going to be good at stopping the run. You know, losing one player is not going to determine the entirety of that defense. So I think they're going to have holes, and it's going to be a little bit easier to run against them, but I don't think it's going to damage them in the least. And I think the secondary part of this is that Freeman just signed yesterday or Wednesday or Tuesday, one of those days. So he has literally no time to learn the playbook and figure out what this team actually looks like. The other problem is he hasn't been on a field since last year. So it's like this early season kind of situation with Devonta Freeman. I don't know that they're going to get him uber involved in the offense this particular week. So I would package that together with the fact that the San Francisco 49ers are the team they're playing against. And that would just lead to a sit for me for Devonta Freeman. And I would, even if you feel like you have to start him, don't start him. You're just going to lose your matchup.
Yeah.
And if Freeman goes out getting 25 points, frick me.
I mean, yeah, if Freeman, I will completely eat my words if he does that. I just really don't think he's going to. You touched on a lot of the key points. He's new to the offense. They're probably going to ease him into it. That offensive line is terrible. I mean, atrocious. Really, they were horrible. One of the worst offense. I mean, especially week one against the Steelers.
Big bad.
They were getting absolutely destroyed. Yeah. I mean, and Saquon Barkley, who is arguably the best running back in football, was averaging 1.8 yards per carry.
Yeah.
Through the first two games before he got hurt. Most of that was due to the first game, but still, like he was struggling with that offensive line. What makes you think anybody else in the league really, other than maybe like Zeke and McCaffrey, can do much with that offensive line? And I honestly think they're going to go RBBC to start. I think by the end of the year, Freeman, once he gets the playbook, and not even by the end of the year, but once Freeman gets the playbook under his control, he'll probably be more the guy. But I think the first week or even two, I mean, we're going to see a lot of Dion Lewis. We're going to see a lot of Wayne Gallman. Maybe not a lot of Wayne Gallman, but we will see some Wayne Gallman. And Freeman is like, I wouldn't be surprised if first game against the 49ers, he gets like 6 carries for like 15 yards. I mean, the 49ers defense is really good. Even without Nick Bosa, they still have a strong run defense. So I'm not starting Devonta Freeman in any league.
Yeah, especially if they're going RBBC. According to Fantasy Pros, they've given up 16 fantasy points per game so far to running backs, which is bottom half of the league. So, I mean, there's obviously fantasy points to go around to people, but if you're spreading it out between 2 to 3 guys, it's not going to look good for your team.
Right.
You know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
and I know it's exciting. You get a player. I have him in a dynasty league, and I you can't just drop the guy.
No.
In a 12-team dynasty league, you can't just go out and drop him. So I've been waiting for him to come in and get signed so that I could at least, it's a rebuild team. So I can either trade or I can start him or whatever. But I'm not starting him this week because you can get excited. Even in a redraft league, you can pick him up and be like, okay, I got a good running back. He was good last year. He's going to be good this week. He's the man in the offense, all this stuff. And it's just like, put your excitement aside for a second, and just understand what the role is going to be for Devonta Freeman in at least for the next week or two. As the role develops into something you could, something where he is more startable, then start him. But I think, as far as week one, it's just, you're not going to get many opportunities out of him, and it's going to be tough to, obviously they signed him to take the place of Saquon.
Right.
So they didn't expect Saquon Barkley to go down for a full season. I don't think they would have signed Freeman if it was a 5-6 week injury, Mm-hmm. So, this is a longer term situation, obviously. For the next 14, 15 games, they have to have Devonta Freeman start. So anyway, he's a sit because I just don't think he's not going to perform this week. I know you're excited. Just don't start him. Don't do it. Don't
do it.
Don't buy in. A-Rob, Allen Robinson. I know it's been tough couple weeks for the Robinson truthers. 10 fantasy points. I think it was actually 9 fantasy points in half PPR, and then 4.5 fantasy points last week in half PPR.
Yikes.
He's gotten 18 targets in 2 weeks. He's averaging 9 targets a game, which paces out to 144 targets over the course of the entire season, which is good news. It means he's being targeted like he was last year. The problem is that the efficiency got even worse than what it already was with him. I do think that the slate of games for the Bears in the early portion of the season was not enviable, because Allen Robinson does have an easier schedule towards the back half of the season. They faced the New York Giants and the Detroit Lions, who both respectively have a very good corner at the top of their charts, I guess. Covering, they may not have a good defense.
Well, Jeff Okudah, he played well, and then this past week, he was getting the targets. I think it was also due to the game script though too, because it was a low scoring game and they were kind of in control of it, or at least had a small lead for most of the game. So it was partly due to that. And then this week against Atlanta, you can continue talking. I didn't cut you off, but
it's a much easier matchup for him this week against Atlanta. And when you look at what the Atlanta Falcons, they normally give up a ton of fantasy points to wide receivers. The Falcons are playing. Wow, what am I saying? I literally brain farted like Joe Biden. So no, Allen Robinson, I just turned off. So many people who are like liberals just turned off this podcast. We are non-binary over here. So we're not going to take either side. I'm just calling it like it is. So anyway,
I'm not a political person at all. But
so Allen Robinson is facing the Atlanta Falcons, and they give up 30 fantasy points, per game to wide receivers so far this year. So I think there's stuff to go around for that entire receiver core, but it does show me that I think, there's 2 guys in the receiver core, and that's Allen Robinson and it's Anthony Miller. And one of these guys is going to have a big week. One of them, the other guy will probably get 7-8 points. So I feel like if this team follows the trend and scores 30 fantasy points at the wide receiver position, a lot of it's going to be Allen Robinson. So that week you've been waiting for is here.
Yeah, it's a fantastic matchup. Atlanta just absolutely stinks on defense. I know it was the Cowboys and that offense is very good, but they torched Atlanta this past week.
We're going to get demonetized for that comment.
What was it?
I said we're going to get demonetized for that comment.
It's whatever. But yeah, no, Atlanta blows. This is the week to start Allen Robinson.
Yeah.
You might kind of be impatient with him after those first 2 weeks, but at least start him this week again.
Right.
I think your patience will pay off.
For our sit of the week at wide receiver, we have Brandon Cooks. Explain yourself, Rick.
Brandon Cooks had a good week. People have been getting excited because he kind of had a bad week in week 1.
Yeah.
And then this week, I think he had. I want to put up see if I can get the numbers in front of me real quick. He had 5 catches for 95 yards on 8 targets, so it looked pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
You might be thinking, well, I'm going to start him this week. Don't. It's against the Pittsburgh Steelers. That defense is one of the best in the league right now.
Mm-hmm.
Probably a top 5 defense in the league. If Will Fuller comes back as well, Will Fuller did get injured in that game. Mm-hmm. You would expect to see him get involved more in the offense. And I think it's going to be similar to the week 1 game where Cooks had 5 targets for 2 catches and for 20 yards. I mean, he's going to do it all year. He's going to have games where he gets 100 receiving yards, and you're going to be like, wow, I'm going to start Brandon Cooks. And then the next week, he's going to get you 30 receiving yards. He's just going to be a roller coaster all year.
Did you say Will Fuller's back too?
What did you say?
I said, did you say Will Fuller is back too?
He might be back. I think last I saw that they were optimistic about him.
Yeah, because that would be even worse.
Yeah, exactly. He was limited in practice. So he might play. If he does play, then Brandon Cooks is just an absolute bust for this week, I think. If he doesn't play, I still wouldn't start Brandon Cooks because it's a tough matchup, but you feel a little bit better about him.
Yeah. I mean, the Pittsburgh Steelers are in the middle of the pack in terms of fantasy points allowed to wide receivers. I think it's like 24, 25 a game. So it's not like it's, if you have to start them, it's not like it's the worst matchup in the world, but I do think with Will Fuller in that lineup facing a tougher Pittsburgh Steelers defense, it is a little bit more concerning to start him. Like if you absolutely have to, if you're asking questions of should I start Preston Williams or Brandon Cooks? Brandon Cooks. But I would play it safe. Sit him this week. So you know what's going to happen? Somebody is going to fly into the comments now, and they're going to say, Preston Williams is a start, dude. And then they're going to take a victory lap.
Against Jacksonville.
They're going to take a victory lap on Friday morning when Preston Williams gets 20 fan. That's not going to happen.
If you're going to start Preston Williams any week, this would be the week.
Yeah. But anyway, so Brandon Cooks, though, I definitely think is a sit this week. Like I would feel much better with him sitting on my bench than in my starting lineup. So be careful with Brandon Cooks, but especially if Will Fuller is back. I think there is a chance that he does have a good performance against Pittsburgh if Will Fuller's not in the lineup. But if he does play, it's going to be a lot harder for Brandon Cooks to maneuver his way to a really good fantasy week. At the tight end position, start of the week, TJ Hawkinson against Arizona. Arizona has been, this year, they've been a little bit better against tight ends, not giving up that many fantasy points to the tight end position. In fact, they've only given up, I believe, 10 fantasy points per game it's 4 fantasy points a game to the tight end position so far this year. So they've been significantly improved. Not really sure why, but I do think it's Arizona still, and it might have just been who they were playing in the first 2 weeks of the season.
Yeah, I mean,
and how they
played Washington, and they did play the 49ers in week 1. I think, but Kittle did get injured in that game. So
right. So for me personally, I think Hawkinson against Arizona is a great matchup. And I think Arizona could go back to looking like fools. If Kenny Golladay is back too, I think that opens things up for Hawk as well. So I would start him this week.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a really high scoring game. I know the Cardinals through 2 weeks have played well against tight ends. I think it was partly due to game script and matchup. I think they usually struggle against tight ends. They did all of last year. Hawkinson has been good this year as well. I think it could only improve with Kenny Golladay. I mean, there's a chance that it won't, but we both think that it'll probably open up the field for him. So in a high scoring game against a team that usually struggles against tight ends, I think Hawkinson's a great start. And
last and certainly least, Jared Cook against Green Bay. Green Bay has allowed around the same amount of fantasy points as the Arizona Cardinals, but that's because they actually have a good defense. So Cook, obviously you would think, it was funny because right before the show, you saw Jared Cook, and you're like, wait a minute, I thought he was going to be the guy to target in this offense without Michael Thomas. And then you looked and he had like 2 targets.
Yeah, he had 5 targets, but he only had 2 catches for 13 yards.
So I think Cook is definitely going to be a matchup dependent start. And I think that he's not a bad play, but against Green Bay, I would sit him on my bench just for this week and try to find something either on the waiver wire, or if you have another option on your bench, figure that out. But I would bench Cook this week.
Yeah, it's just a tough matchup. I think they're going to probably try to get Emmanuel Sanders more involved too this week. And he, if you looked at the fantasy numbers, you probably think he wasn't awful this week, but it was only because he scored a touchdown. He only had 13 receiving yards. So I'm not trying to start Cook this week, but he is going to be a good start depending on the matchup week to week.
Yeah. So there you have it. Starts and sits for week 3 in the bag. Can't believe it. Thursday Night Football tonight starts week 3.
Oh, yeah, let's go.
Don't forget to check out our website, thefantasychampions.com. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram. Be sure to subscribe. Leave a comment down below and do all the good things. Talk to you Friday.
Later.
Thank you for listening to the Fantasy Champions Podcast. Make sure you subscribe on iTunes and YouTube and follow us on Twitter @TheFFChamps.